Today I'm sitting down with Frosty, who's the biggest Michael Jackson fan I know. We're going to talk about what we thought about Michael. Neither of us has told each other. Frosty, start off by telling us what Michael Jackson means to you.
Well, I'm a Michael Jackson fan insofar as I've grown up listening to his music, watching all of his music videos and being obsessed with the whole world and fascinated by him as a human being, good and bad. So whilst you say I'm the biggest MJ fan, I would say
the biggest MJ fan I know. So that's
the
my
biggest
reference point.
MJ fan that you know. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of MJ fans out there that are,
Sure,
to be honest, insane. I would say I'm nowhere near that, but I
he's
know,
your favorite artist.
He's my favorite artist, yeah, considerably. Yeah, I'm sort of fascinated by him, the whole package.
Okay, so now moment of truth. What did you think of the movie?
Yeah, I'd say this is like no more than a 6.5 out of 10 for me.
Okay.
So the thing with this, obviously, is it's produced by the same guy that did Bohemian Rhapsody. And I remember watching that film in the cinema thinking, this is great, I love this. And it being like a real wow movie for me, having not really engaged with Queen for a long time. And it reminded me of how good they were and all this stuff. And I felt like, this is great. And I was also thinking at the time, how good an MJ version of this could be. So my expectation levels were relatively high until I suppose the trailer somewhat tempered things for me. So it's going into this, it's very difficult for me to get out of that mindset of I'm basically going to watch Bohemian Rhapsody, Michael Jackson version. And it kind of was that, but not quite as good. And it felt to me to be a bit of a letdown in that it's very cheesy, I found. It's not particularly subtle. It doesn't really get into things in any real depth. On the other hand, I have to say that Jaafar is amazing at the dancing. I think it's an almost impossible task, right? How can anyone play this guy that's not only like looks physically so different across his life, but has such a long career with all these different like phases of his life. It's an almost impossible task, and you're asking this guy who's never acted before to take on that. And so to me it was almost impossible. His dancing is amazing. I think he does really, really well. However, it's so difficult for someone that is so intimately familiar with all of those music videos and performances. As soon as I see something that's not quite right, it really stands out. And also the way he looked, the makeup was kind of slightly weird at times. But on the whole, you have to give him an enormous amount of credit for the level of dedication to get to a point where he could imitate him that well physically with the dancing. So I enjoyed it. It's entertaining, but it was a letdown.
When you came out of the cinema, you came out feeling let down.
Yeah, I still enjoyed it because being a fan, I found it entertaining to see certain parts of his life brought to life on the screen, like the bit at the beginning with the, Joe being very abusive. Then you've got the hair burning scene.
That was harrowing.
Yeah, that's quite like full, and to be able to see that, because I've watched loads of footage, like that, literally thousands of hours of him being interviewed and stuff of him behind the scenes doing all sorts of stuff, including things like the footage you can see of his hair burn thing.
Yeah, I only saw that the other day. It's crazy that's actually out there.
Yeah. So to be able to see it brought to life on the screen was really cool. I enjoyed a lot of that, and I love the songs, of course. The other thing I would say, this film has a third of all of the songs that he's done. Like, there's so much more that's not in it. I think the musical is better for sure. The one on Broadway and the one that was on the West End that's now finished, because there's just more in it. There's more songs and there's more. It's just more engaging, and it's just a little bit more of a narrative to it as well. So whilst I have to applaud Jaafar's performance and particularly Coleman Domingo as well, yes. I think he plays Joe Jackson very, very well. Other than that, it's a bit naff, a bit cheesy, lacking in subtlety and depth, but nonetheless quite entertaining. Like, I like to see these songs performed. It's, that's as far as it goes for me, really.
I think the context, if you're talking about Bohemian Rhapsody, is perfect for this, because I think someone like myself, who I would say I'm exactly the average fan of Michael Jackson.
Yeah,
Like I'm
yeah.
nowhere near you, but I like his music. I've actually been listening to it a lot since the movie came out. But I think I know more about him than the average person. Like I've read a couple of books, but I don't know nearly as much as you. And so coming from it with those two angles, I gave it a 4 out of 5. I saw its limitations, but I feel like a lot of the limitations weren't because of what they did. It's just because of the fact that you're making a 2-hour movie. And like you say, that the music, obviously if you're doing a musical, you can put more songs in it. They were never going to be able to forget all of his songs, but never going to be able to play all of his hits in a 2-hour movie that you're only going to get 30-40 minutes of actual music max.
Yeah, it's just that there's periods that were just not covered at all.
I mean, I think ideally what a lot of people are saying is they would love a 10-hour miniseries to do his life and you could get more out of it. That would have been great, but that's just not what this project was.
Of course
and that's
not.
where I think, from that point of view of making it a 2-hour movie, I think they did a good job. But the result is you're obviously going to have limitations, especially if someone that had such a long, complicated, nuanced career, you need a lot more time. The irony is I feel as though your reaction is the right one for a big MJ fan, whereas a lot of people in the comments are coming out basically saying they love MJ, like he's their favorite artist, this movie's amazing, blah, blah, like all this heaping of praise. And I almost feel like, no, either you really, really enjoyed it and that's great, and it probably means you're a superficial Michael Jackson fan, or if you're a really hardcore fan that knows all this stuff, I think the reaction should be yours of like, this is entertaining, but it's not very deep. And so that's why I think it's a bit contradictory that people are saying they love it so much because they're the biggest Michael Jackson fans in the world. But I actually think, as someone who knows what my level of knowledge, that it does a good job at evoking a lot of stuff about him. Even sometimes it's just like one throwaway line.
Yeah, it does well, actually. You're right. It captures a lot of the little bits of his personality in nice little throwaway comments. A lot of that more so for the fans, because it's kind of like, oh yeah, they've mentioned that and they've mentioned that.
It is, but from a storytelling point of view, I think it does a bit of both sometimes, where it does move the story forward, and it is also just acknowledging, because I have something like them leaving Motown, which was obviously a huge thing, is literally just addressed in one throwaway comment about, oh, Jermaine won't be with us because we left Motown, and that's it. And I've been watching a lot of content about people explaining all the stuff that was in the movie, and I think that's great. I think people like myself, that's the great thing, is you watch this movie and then you watch other documentaries and other videos and you get to get all of that knowledge. But I think this is a really good way for someone that knows a superficial amount about him to kind of reignite an interest in it, enjoy all of the music. As I said, I used to listen to Michael Jackson a normal amount, but I probably haven't in years, and now I'm just listening to it constantly. And I think as a movie, as a biopic, they almost have to be superficial just in their form. But the other thing, so the critics, let's talk about that. So obviously you've seen the critics gave it started off at like 27% of Rotten Tomatoes, it's moved up to 39. It's got 97 for the audience. What do you think of both of those?
For a long part of Michael's career, from what I've read about, the media are quite keen to pan regardless, and obviously since things have come out later on, that's increased massively. So anything could come out with his name on it, and people would write it off. I don't have any problem with there being criticism of the film, because I personally don't think it was that great.
But if you had to give it a fresh or rotten, so one or the other, what would you give it?
Just about fresh.
But that is the whole point of Rotten Tomatoes, is something being 97% doesn't mean it's 97% people think it's the best movie ever. It's just saying 97% think that it's just over that threshold.
Yeah, and a lot of that 90% will be those kind of fans that. So this is why I make the point that whilst I'm a big MJ fan, I like to distance myself from those that are
the crazies,
the crazy ones, but also the ones that almost force themselves to like and anything that comes out with Michael's name on it.
I don't think you need to I think if you go in really wanting to like this movie, I think it definitely gives enough. Like, I think you went in with an open mind, but also a critical one. You weren't like, I'm going to like this no matter what. I think if someone went in wanting to like it, it's a very easy movie to like, because of the fact that it's superficial, it's easy. I think the pacing is fine. One of my main criticism from a purely movie point of view, taking aside, is the structure is broken. But anyone who's a critic, for example, knows the background of the story. And I'm just going to say this once and for all for the record, what happened here. 2 very important things happened that most people aren't talking about. Those 2 things are, and it's not clear in what order they happen. The first is they made the movie that was too long. They made a 4-hour movie and basically said, we need to break this into 2. And they wrote, and it's not clear whether the last act of the 4-hour movie or the last act of the 2-hour movie basically had to be completely rewritten, because it was going to acknowledge the abuse allegations, but because of a lawsuit by the victim, they weren't allowed to do that. So they had to reshoot that. So, I mean, it doesn't really matter, but the point is they had two huge logistical obstacles, and that's why we have a
That's why the ending's so weird.
Yeah. I'll tell you one thing about the ending. I think it should have ended about 5 minutes earlier. I think when it went from the Jackson tour and then it cut to the Bad tour, I think it should have ended just as he went out on stage, just kind of leaving you wanting more. But ending on a musical number was weird. Yeah. Especially back to back.
This is one of my issues, right? That song, Bad, was never really one of his biggest live performing songs. In fact, it didn't feature that heavily on the Bad tour. It felt as if because Bohemian Rhapsody was so successful because of that Live Aid ending, that it was like, oh, let's do this. The fact that it was at Wembley as well, it's like,
that's true.
It's almost as if I can imagine they've copy and pasted some of those like CGI things.
Yeah, that's true.
So I was not keen on that. I mean, the performance of Jaafar's is great, but also it didn't really capture the Bad tour, in my view, is like the pinnacle of live performing. And thing that at the end it didn't get to that level because like there were no backing dancers on stage. Like it was somewhat disappointing for that to end like that, and also it just came at a bit of it felt like a very hard blunted stop. In terms of things that I really felt like they should have made more of, Motown 25, what they didn't show in that was before the Billie Jean performance was a Jackson 5 performance where they're all on stage singing, and there's a point where all the brothers leave, but Michael's still on stage and he's talking to the crowd and he's saying, oh, I love these days, they were great, blah, blah, blah. I like those songs, but especially I like the new songs. And then Billie Jean starts. And
they should have. That wouldn't be easy to put in it.
Does not capture the hype in the crowd at the time. And it was a great opportunity because all of the footage of that show it's old. It's from 1983, so it's not particularly good sound quality or picture quality. So they could have really amped up how fizzy and bubbling the crowd were at that point, because everyone was there thinking, what's he gonna do? Because there was no internet and all this stuff. Like everyone was buzzed about.
Was that the first time Billie Jean was played?
It was
played?
First time it was ever performed live.
So people knew the song, but it's never been performed.
Yeah, and no one had ever seen the moonwalk. So these things happened. And it was like this huge thing. It just didn't quite capture.
I think when something's missed completely, I forgive it because it's like you ran out. But I think that's a great example of something they could have done better because they showed it. So they could have done 30 seconds of that. Another detail, which I think again there was a throwaway line, but I saw a video explaining about the fact that he actually hated the performance, and afterwards because of the fact that he was in tears. He didn't stay on his toes long enough. So I think behind the scenes he says, "Oh, I wanted to stay longer." But that was it. Yeah. And I guess fair enough. They got 90% of the way there. But I think it would have been better to just make it 10 seconds longer and make him in tears. Yeah. And then apparently the next day when he started getting compliments, he realized that he actually done a good job. But I think they could have emphasized that a bit more. The last thing I want to hit is one of the main things with the critics is saying that it whitewashed Michael or whatever. We don't need to get into whether they're true or not, but we all know that the allegations are out there. But the thing is, you can't whitewash something that hadn't happened yet. Because I did the digging. Yeah. The earliest accusation goes back to 1988. Yep. Maybe 1987. So, and that was obviously an accusation that happened later, but it went back to that. Yep. So the idea is that they were meant to acknowledge something that happened in the last 5 minutes of the movie completely away from the stage, which I think is silly. The second movie, which apparently I read yesterday, it's been confirmed that they are making it, which I think is good news. Well, actually, how do you feel about them doing it?
I'm quite concerned about that.
I mean, I can imagine because how they deal with it, it's kind of a lose-lose.
That's where it does become whitewashing.
Yes, because just to wrap up on this one, I think, despite what the critics say, I think they did a very good job at hinting at a lot of things.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And it's not one way or the other. These are things that people could say, he didn't do it because this, and this. I kind of maybe justify his stranger behavior by saying that it was innocent. But me as someone who is very aware of it, there were a lot of scenes where in the back of my head, I'm like, well, this kind of explains why maybe one day he did this. So anything from obviously the broken childhood to the fact that he felt very lonely, to the fact that he couldn't really connect with adults. Even when he was in the toy store buying them toys, not as someone who doesn't know the chronology exactly, I was like, oh, I wonder if here he's going to become friends with one of these boys or whatever. And it wasn't. It never went into the weird. Mark Kermode, like slated it in his review. He kind of acknowledged all the superficial stuff, but then he talked about how it's a deification. It makes him look like Jesus, like blah, blah. And he obviously had his big thing was like, he's making him look like Jesus, he's making him like Jesus. And yeah.
But he kind of was at that point. That's the
reality.
Like,
yeah.
That did happen. As much as he wants to like,
yeah, exactly.
History, that's how it went.
And I also don't think I think they showed it a few times, but to me, it wasn't like they were like hammering it too hard. But I also think you can look at it skeptically and be like, because not to bring up someone very unsavory, but the thing with Jimmy Savile that everyone always asks, why was he so close to these children? It's because he did all this hospital work and people trusted him. And I think one of the things that you can take away from the Michael movie, if you believe that he did the things, how is it acceptable by parents and so that he was able to be so close with these children physically? And it's because he did all of this. Wherever you think the truth lies, I think the facts that they laid out there are part of that story, one way or the other. And I think they did a pretty good job at sprinkling them in. Yeah. I think the best way to do the second movie is to show the honest truth of the stuff that we know. And that actually, if you take that philosophy, you don't go out with the mission of we're going to make him look like a saint and that he's innocent, and you don't, they probably will,
that's
because it's funded by the estate. I guarantee
you that's what will happen.
My optimistic hope is that they'll take the approach of just saying we're only going to show the truth. So we'll show the fact that he had these, he was friends with children, whether it's Macaulay Culkin or the kids who ended up accusing him. And maybe they'll show that because in his defense in the trial, he admitted the fact that he did sleep in the beds of these children. So anything that we know, you show that. Then you can show the fact that he was accused of things. And then you can show the trial. The number one argument of people who defend him says that he had a trial and he was found innocent. Show all of that. Show lawyers saying that you can't convict someone. It's not beyond a reasonable doubt. And so I think if you show a balanced thing without actually saying, this movie says that he's innocent or that he's guilty. Like, a lot of movies do that. Let the audience decide. So I think that's the best way.
That is what it should be.
It should be.
But I can almost guarantee you that's what it won't be. And then it is into whitewashing. I think Mark Kermode's review is a bit harsh because, yeah, they're not talking about any of the allegations and they've like maybe purposefully chosen to stop at a certain point. Like, it still happened, right? That's how it went. I mean, yes, it's hammed up a bit and yes, it's a bit cheesy, but broadly speaking, those things did happen. I feel like you could almost just leave it at this point, and like you can do the rest. Like leave it up to the viewer to go and do their own like looking. I would just think it's just a bit of a shame that there's not more songs in it.
So I disagree with that because I think one of the critics, people are saying, oh, isn't it really convenient that you ended at 1988 right before the allegations started? And I think if it was a standalone movie, that's a completely fair argument of it is whitewashing to only show half the story. Whereas to me, the fact that their plan was to make one, a part two, and it ends saying, there will be another one. People are speculating, what does it mean? It's like, well, it means there's going to be they want there to be a sequel. And so I think there does need to be a sequel because you stop there and you don't acknowledge the bad stuff. But the last thing I want to say before I forget is that people saying that it's whitewash, the first one is whitewashing and making him look like a saint. I disagree. Obviously they show all the good stuff, but I don't think it makes him look 100% good. I think I can name 4 or 5 things off my head. The whole thing, which I actually think is a really funny scene, when he says that he's going to stand up to his father, blah, 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 and then cuts immediately to a scene where he tells his 2 white lawyers to go do it for him. I mean, obviously Joe Jackson was a monster, but you could say, like, it was a bit of cowardice on Michael Jackson's part, and that was a thing throughout his career, that he was a bit manipulative of people. He got people to do it, like the lawyer when he fires him. So that's not a positive thing. The plastic surgery, obviously, we understand that it's because his dad called him Big Nose. They don't even mention the acne, but that was a big thing as well. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's showing a weakness on his behalf that he had. And it's not just once. You can clearly, they show at least 3 different times in the movies where he's obviously had surgery done over and over and over. Something like the animals, people can say it's cute and endearing, but I think the movie doesn't hide from the fact that it's weird to have snakes and monkeys. And again, this was meant to be really nice and stuff, but I think one of the weirdest scenes I thought was the one where he gets the gang members together.
Yeah, that's cheesy.
It was cheesy, it was out of pace, but I think, again, if you look at it with a critical eye, I think it kind of showed that he was, I'm just a rich person who's going to wake up and get gang members together and I'm going to solve everything.
I think that scene was particularly clumsy.
I think it was clumsy in a lot of ways, but again, if you take it at face value, I was like, maybe it just shows how naive he is about things, that thinking this is how you're going to fix the world, dancing about it or whatever. And then the other one is, it's hinted obviously that after the Pepsi hair incident, about he becomes basically, it foreshadows the fact he's going to be addicted to painkillers for good reason. But again, these aren't necessarily character faults, but they're clearly foreshadowing a lot of weakness, true, undeniable bad sides of the Michael Jackson story, no pun intended. And so again, people saying that it's a complete whitewash, I'm like, no, they alluded to some uncomfortable truth. Yeah, I'm weirdly optimistic that maybe they will find an artistic way to honor Michael from their point of view, but while also honoring the fact that because ultimately this is the thing, no one truly knows. The people from his family and stuff that said, of course he never did this, like, well, you don't actually know.
No one actually knows, except for him and the people involved.
Yes, exactly.
I think what will happen is, like, at the moment, there's only really one narrative, and then you get to 1988 and it goes like this, and the film, the estates version will be this way, and a lot of other people will expect it to go that way, and ideally what you want is that one in the middle that we're talking about. And I don't know if that's going to happen. I'd like to think they might, but
I feel like you can do the estate version, which is obviously the Michael version, but as long, I mean, I guess if they showed Michael having a completely angelic relationship with one of the boys,
I think what they're doing
who accuses him, and then you show the kid accusing him, that is the movie saying that this was all a complete lie.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's a way of maybe you show what the public saw, what the family saw, the fact that he was hanging out with this kid, and then again, without making it obviously saying, oh, he did do that, but if you never show how they are behind closed doors and you basically say the movie acknowledges we don't actually know what happened there, I think that is how you thread the needle. But I guess that's implying that there's something sinister because you're not showing it, so it's difficult. I don't know, it's one of the hardest stories in the world to do, and there's a reason it's difficult.
It's an impossible task in so many ways, this film. It's an impossible thing to get right.
But bringing that back to the original, keeping all of that in mind, I think purely from a movie point of view, from a casual fan point of view, I think they did a good job. This is an enjoyable movie. It's something I know I'll rewatch. Again, very much a la Bohemian Rhapsody. It's flawed from a story point of view. Like, obviously, they changed the chronology there. Structurally, there are some issues for hardcore fans. There's obviously some inconveniences with the story. But overall, purely as a movie, if you don't overthink it, I think it's enjoyable. Do you think it's something you'll rewatch much, or like?
I think I might go and watch it again.
Okay.
But beyond that, I'm not going to be watching any of Jaafar's performances, because why would you when you've got the real thing, which is much better? Because it literally is an impression or impersonation of these performances. What enjoyment do you get out of that, watching that? Just go and watch the real thing.
That's one last detail I put in my review, is I think Jaafar did a great job, but you used the word imitation quite a few times. I feel like it was more of an imitation than an enactment, I get. Yeah. I think it's a weird point of view to have, but it's almost like any time he was on screen, you were seeing the real Michael Jackson and not an actor performing him, which can be a good thing. But to me, it was actually just a weird thing that he wasn't making it his own. He was just trying to imitate Michael, as opposed to like an actor who's like, oh, I understand this character, and he's not bringing him to life, he's imitating him, I guess.
Not quite. He did a decent job.
He never acted before. Yeah, exactly. He did an amazing job. If you judge it just on the singing and the dancing, he's absolutely amazing. But if you take it as a whole, I think it's very good, but I think it's just a notch below, being nominated for an Oscar type of thing. Whereas Coleman Domingo, I think, is a shoo-in for a Best Supporting Actor nomination.
He was a standout performer for me.
Yeah. Well, Frosty, thank you very much for your thoughts. I think it's probably what I expected, but I'm very glad to hear you say it. And guys, make sure to follow and subscribe this is actually the first time we've done a longer review of stuff, and I think we're going to start doing them a little bit more often. We're going to be doing Devil Wears Prada 2 with Sunita in the next few days, and Frosty and I are about to do a 2-hour podcast about Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers, following up on our episode of The Fellowship last year. So make sure to subscribe for that. That'll be dropping in the next few months.